South African Paralympics and Olympic track star Oscar Pistorius once captured the attention of the world as a story of the indomitable human spirit. Dubbed the Blade Runner by the press, he showed how a person could overcome incredible difficulties to rise to the top of their field of endeavor. And then, on Valentine's Day 2013, he shot and killed his girlfriend. Let's look into the terrible turn of events and find out what happened and what would lead Oscar to being sentenced, resentenced, and resentenced again. Before we start, we would like to extend our deepest sympathies to the family and friends of Riva Steenkamp, the victim of that fateful night. Oscar Pistorius was born just outside of Johannesburg, South Africa in 1986. He was born suffering from fibular hemimelia, a condition where the outside edges of the feet and the fibula of each leg are missing. At the age of 11 months, both his legs were amputated below the knee, and he would grow up using prosthetics. He was a born athlete, though. Early in life, he participated in water polo, tennis, and rugby. It was while recovering from a knee injury he suffered in a rugby game that he took up running track as a means to heal and strengthen his body. On the track, he would find not just his healing, but fame and fortune as well. He competed in events for both those who were amputees and against able-bodied sprinters. He beat all comers on the local, regional, and national level. He then moved on to the Paralympics, where he eventually was able to make the South African Olympic team. Oscar drew sponsors like Nike, BT, and Oakley. His good looks and the trademark prosthetic legs made the Blade Runner a worldwide celebrity. And he used that fame not just to promote himself, but to raise awareness in the limitless capabilities of human beings, no matter what difficulty they may face. One night, however, he went from acclaimed hero to controversial villain. His perfectly curated image was dashed to the ground, forever to be known as a killer. The world would watch as he was dragged into court, and every minute of that night was examined and cross-examined. Over the course of 30 days of broadcast testimony, he and his emotions were laid bare in a quest for truth, justice, and maybe turn the unlikeliest of champions into a global talking point. On the evening of February 13, 2013, Oscar and his girlfriend, Riva Steenkamp, were settling in for the night. It was the middle of the South African summer. Oscar's home in the Silverwoods country estate portion of Pretoria was hot, and he had opened up the sliding glass door to the second-floor bedroom's balcony. He placed a fan on that balcony and turned it on, attempting to get some kind of cooling in his home. Riva, a 30-year-old model, was finishing up her yoga exercises. Just earlier in the evening, she had given Oscar, her boyfriend of about 3 months, an early Valentine's Day card where she had written, "I think today is a good day to tell you I love you." As Riva came into the bedroom and got ready for bed, Oscar removed his prosthetic legs and climbed into bed. As the two settled in and went to sleep, it was hot and humid, and the fan was just making things worse. In the early morning hours, Oscar would awaken and decide that the fan was doing more to make the room uncomfortable than it was doing any good. So he got up and brought the fan in. He slid the sliding glass doors closed and returned to bed. And then he was startled by a sound coming from the adjoining bathroom area. In the dark, he whispered for Riva to take cover and to call the police. He thought the sound could have been a ladder being propped up against the house. The place was in the process of being painted, and the workers had left ladders lying around the yard and up against the walls of the house. Oscar reached under his bed and grabbed his Taurus PT-917. Still, without his prosthetic legs on, Oscar made his way to the short hall that joined the bathroom to the bedroom. In the dim light, he could see that the bathroom window was open, and there was sound coming from behind the door that led to a small toilet room. Something set him off, and he fired 4 shots into that door. With a thud, something behind the door fell, hitting the toilet and the floor. Oscar stumbled back into the bedroom and grabbed his prosthetic legs. He strapped them on quickly and then grabbed a cricket bat that was leaning against the wall. He noticed as he turned on the lights that Riva was not in bed. Oscar went back to the bathroom and battered on the door, finally knocking out a panel to give him a view of what was inside. It was Riva, and she was mortally wounded. Oscar began screaming and reached through the door to grab the key and unlock it. He pulled her out of the tiny room and took her downstairs. He would call the estate manager and beg him for help. The next-door neighbor would also quickly arrive on the scene to witness the horror of Oscar holding Riva's body as her life's blood ran out on the floor. Oscar was sobbing and praying and pleading for someone to help. He immediately told them that he had shot Riva by accident. Police, led by Detective Colonel Hilton Botha, was the first on the scene. Immediately, they set about getting an ambulance and securing the crime scene. A distraught Oscar Pistorius would be taken into custody, and a terrible tale would unfold over the next year as that event was brought to trial, and differing versions of the night's event would spin out from the prosecution and the defense, as well as news outlets and pundits around the world. The police would hold a press conference later that day as news stations began picking up on the incident that had happened. Police Brigadier Denise Biakus spoke to the assembled crowd after the arrest.
Just to bring you an update of the incident that happened this morning. First of all, from the South African Police Services side, we can confirm that there was a shooting incident this morning at the home of the well-known Paralympic athlete Oscar Pistorius. At this stage, we can confirm that a young woman, a 30-year-old woman, did die on the scene of gunshot wounds. A 26-year-old man has been arrested and has been charged with murder. At this stage, he's on his way to a visit to the district surgeon for a medical examination, and he'll be appearing in the Pretoria Magistrates Court at 2 o'clock this afternoon.
She continued answering questions about other arrests and other witnesses.
We're talking about neighbors and people that heard things that happened earlier in the evening and when the shooting took place, yes.
By now, news of prior incidents in the home had begun to leak out, ones that didn't quite match up with the public perception of the beloved South African runner. Brigadier Biakus tried to answer the questions without drawing any direct connections.
I can't confirm whether it's related to the person who's been arrested, but I can confirm that there has previously been incidents at the home of Mr. Oscar Pistorius. There's been no reports of forced injury or persons on the premises who weren't supposed to be there. That's all at this stage. But obviously, again, this is part of an ongoing investigation that is far from finalized.
It would be just over a year before Oscar would stand trial for the killing of Riva Steenkamp. While he never denied his part in her death, he maintained that he in no way knew that she was behind the bathroom door and that he had never thought of killing her. The prosecution would strongly and extensively argue otherwise. While it would be impossible to cover everything that was said during that 6 weeks of trial, let's take a minute to look at the setup of the case and how it was handled within the workings of the unique South African legal system. The use of a jury in a criminal trial was eliminated in South Africa during the time of apartheid and has never been reinstated. Instead, the case is argued out before a judge and 2 assessors who serve as assistants to the judge. While the charges are set against the defendant at the beginning, in the end, the judge will be the one to determine innocent or guilt and then judge what level of guilt the defendant is liable for. In this case, Judge Tilly Masipa would preside. A 12-year veteran of the bench, she had begun her career as a social worker and then as a journalist during the difficult last decade of the apartheid regime. She would go on to get her law degree and become the second black woman to rise to a judgeship, eventually becoming part of the High Court of South Africa. Her hallmark as a judge was her willingness for transparency, which was in part why the case was so openly televised. Highly aware of how the media and the instant fame could affect the trial and the players within it, she early on warned the participants to be mindful and respectful and operate with proper decorum as the court required. She was also known as a champion of women's rights, with little mercy on those men who may abuse them.
Possibly think this is entertainment. It is not. So please restrain yourselves. I must say this is very disturbing. I am warning the media, if you do not behave, You are not going to be treated with soft gloves by this court.
A longtime colleague would say about the woman who was set to oversee the trial.
I think that this guy Pistorius could never have got a much more saner judge than Tilly, because he's going to look at the facts, as they are, and she'll make a call, whatever it is.
Lead prosecutor in the case, Hetty Nell, was a 30-year veteran as a prosecutor. He'd earned the nickname the Pit Bull for his aggressive tenacity in examining witnesses, particularly those accused of the crime in question. He had experience not just as a prosecutor, but also as a figure in high-profile cases that received international attention. He would push for a charge of murder against Oscar Pistorius, as well as 2 separate firearms charges and an illegal ammunition charge. He would also at times push Oscar on the stand to the breaking point, leaving the accused man in tears and physically ill. On the defense side, Barry Rue was the lead defense counsel. The 32-year veteran defense attorney had a reputation for dismantling prosecutions with pointed cross-examinations. A counterpuncher to Neil's aggressive, badgering style, the two would garner quite a bit of attention for their own antics and angles as this case unfolded. As a note, anyone addressing the court in this case would follow South African legal protocol and direct their answers to the presiding judge. They are required to do so with respect, and therefore you will hear them say "Milady" as they make their statements. As we said before, the court case was very long and well covered in the media. Let's distill down the real essence of this case. We'll compress and compile the information not to make a case for either side, but to keep the impact of the story manageable and on point. The prosecution, who admitted their case was largely circumstantial because there was no actual eyewitnesses, they would portray Oscar as a person who had a tumultuous relationship with Riva, as he was controlling and violent with a tendency to unwisely fire his guns, sometimes even in public. They contended that the two had actually been arguing that night, and Riva had locked herself in the bathroom. They went on to allege that in a fit of anger, Oscar had shot through the door, and his choice of ammunition reflected his desire to kill. They tried to cast doubt on the story of hearing a noise and thinking it was a robber.
You made a mistake.
That's correct.
You killed a person, that's what you did, isn't it?
I made a mistake.
You killed Riva Steenkamp, that's what you did.
I made a mistake, my lady.
You're repeating it 3 times. What was your mistake?
My mistake is that I took Riva's life, my lady.
You killed her. You shot and killed her.
On the defense side, Rue would counter that the shooting was a tragic mistake brought on by Oscar's vulnerability through his disability, and that his own mental health had compounded his fears of an intruder that night. He would point to the extremes of sorrow and remorse Oscar expressed at the time of the shooting. He would also attempt to show that Riva and Oscar had a positive relationship, even though the two had experienced a few rocky moments.
Mr. Pistorius, did you at any time intend to kill Riva?
I did not intend to kill Riva, my lady, or anybody else for that matter.
We'll begin our look with Oscar's own account of that night to the court as part of his testimony. First, he testifies about the setting of the bedroom and the work that was being done on the house.
Walked behind Riva where she came in the room, and I closed the bedroom door and I locked the bedroom door as I do every night, and I put the cricket bat between the sunglasses cabinets and the door. If you lay the bat down in that gap, the bat's about 2 centimeters short of being at the door, and the reason I put it there was because the lock mechanism on the door wasn't very strong.
Does the house have an alarm system?
The alarm system doesn't have any door monitors. The outside sensors are battery operated. They don't work with wiring.
He then begins to talk about the incident itself, from the last words he had with Riva to his decision to arm himself.
I woke up, my lady, in the early hours of the 14th of February. It was extremely warm in my room. I sat up in bed, Riva was still awake, or she was obviously not sleeping. She rolled over to me and she said, "Can't you sleep, my baba?" And I said, "No, I can't." And I got out on my side of the bed. I got to the fans, where the fans were. I placed it pretty much just inside the room. I then proceeded to close the sliding doors and lock them. I then drew the curtains. It was at this point that I heard a window open in the bathroom. It sounded like the window sliding open.
What did you think at the time, Mr. Pistorius?
My lady, that's the moment that everything changed. I thought that there was a burglar that was gaining entry into my home. I think initially I just froze. I didn't really know what to do. I'd heard this noise. I interpreted it as being somebody was climbing into the bathroom. The first thing that ran through my mind was that I needed to arm myself, that I needed to protect Riva and I, that I needed to get my gun.
He moves into the short hallway, perhaps to confront the intruder, thinking that Riva is still in the bedroom behind him.
I was looking down the passage. I was scared that the person was going to come out, or people were going to come out at that point. I rushed as quick as I could. I couldn't see anything in the room, so I ran with my hand out in front of me, at times touching the floor. And then when I got to my bed, I made my way along the side of my bed. I grabbed my firearm from underneath the bed, and it had a canvas holster on it. I immediately took it out the holster. I whispered for Riva to get down and phone the police. It was at that point that I was just overcome with fear, and I started screaming and shouting for the burglar or the intruders to get out of my house. I shouted for Riva to get on the floor. I shouted for her to phone the police. I screamed at the people, the persons, to get out us.
He enters the bathroom, and a sound sets everything into a do-or-die moment.
Slowly made my way down the passage, constantly aware that this threat, these people or persons, could come at me at any time. I stopped shouting because I was worried that if I shouted, the person would know exactly where I was. If I put my head around the corner, that I could get shot.
He said he hears the toilet room door shut and reacts.
I heard a door slam, which could have only been the toilet door. I couldn't see into the bathroom at this point, but I could hear the door slam. And for me to confirm that there was a person or people inside the toilet or inside the bathroom at that time. As I slowly peered into the bathroom, I could see that the window was open. Saw that there wasn't anybody around the corner waiting to attack me. I started screaming again for Riva to phone the police. I wasn't sure where to point the firearm. I had it pointed at the toilet, but my eyes were going between the window and the toilet. And then I heard a noise from inside the toilet, what I perceived to be somebody coming out of the toilet. Before I knew it, I'd fired 4 shots at the door.
His ears ringing from the loud gunshots in the enclosed bathroom, Oscar staggers back to the bedroom and then discovers that Riva is not there.
My ears were ringing, I couldn't hear anything. So I shouted, I kept on shouting for Riva to phone the police. No one responded to me. At that point I lifted myself up onto the bed and I placed my hand back to the right hand side of the bed, and I looked, I felt if Riva was there and I couldn't feel anything. The first thing I thought was maybe that she got down onto the floor, like I told her to. Maybe she was just scared. I think it was at that point, my lady, that it first dawned upon me that it could be Riva that was in the bathroom or in the toilet. I made my way back to inside the bathroom, and I walked up to the bathroom door. I tried to grab the handle and rip open the door, push the door open, and it was locked.
Oscar then begins screaming for help. He grabs the cricket bat and heads back to the bathroom, now having some understanding of what has happened.
I screamed for somebody to help me, and then put my prosthetic legs on. I ran as fast as I could back to the bathroom. I ran into the door. I didn't move at all. I leaned back and I tried to kick the door. Nothing happened. I must have placed my firearm on the carpet in the bathroom. I ran straight up to the door and I started hitting it. So I I think I hit it 3 times. I tried to open the door from the inside, but there was no key in the door, and I leant over the middle partition of the door, and I saw the key was on the floor. At that point, all I wanted to do was just climb into the toilet over the middle part of the door. Whilst I leant over the partition to get in, I saw the key, so I took it and I unlocked the door and I flung the door open. I threw it open, and I sat over Reva and I cried.
Overcome with emotion in the courtroom, Oscar broke down.
She wasn't breathing.
We'll take an adjournment. Court will adjourn.
Prosecutor Nell would then go on to argue that not only did Oscar intend to kill Reva, but that he had to know just how lethal the rounds from his pistol would be in that situation. As part of this line of questioning, he presented a video of Oscar firing at a firing range, first using a shotgun and then the pistol used in the shooting of Reva.
What we can see there is the effect the ammunition had on a watermelon. It exploded. Am I right?
That's correct, my lady.
You know that the same happened to Reva's head. It exploded. Have a look.
The pistol used in the shooting was a 9mm Taurus semi-automatic pistol. The 9mm Luger round it fired would be considered a medium-powered handgun round that would not normally cause such horrific wounds. But this one had been loaded with Winchester Ranger rounds, part of their Talon series. This particular round fired a bullet that would quickly expand massively upon contact with the target, flowering out to create a massive wound channel and dump kinetic energy into the target. Punching through the door, they would have already reached maximum expansion. The wounds created were devastating. Bullets hit Reva in the head, pelvis, and in one arm. A fourth bullet missed but struck the toilet behind her. Ballistics experts and forensic scientists provided information about the angles of the shots and the trajectory of the bullets and the lethality of the wounds. Nell went after Oscar on the witness stand, pushing him to a breaking point.
That's it. Have a look there, mister. I know you don't want to because you don't want to take responsibility, but it's time that you look at it.
As I picked Reva up, my fingers touched her head. I remember. I don't have to look at a picture. I was there.
The defense would counter by presenting the courtroom and the public with a completely different picture of Oscar. One of extreme vulnerability and an easy victim due to his physical limitations at the moment of the incident. He asked the man to remove his prosthetic legs and walk around on the stumps as he had on that fateful night.
Let's look at who is the person. After incorporating the Supreme Court of Appeals finding that you must sentence today, or Friday, or whatever day, this is the person. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. It's dark. He's on his stumps. That's all common cause. Not on his legs. He's not running around the track. He suffers from an anxiety disorder. This must all be seen in the context of his disability and the pervasive effect of the disability on his subjective thinking. He proceeded to the entrance of the bathroom because of his excessive fight response and his inability to run away. I don't want to overplay disability, but the time has come that we must just look at different eyes, at least with unbiased eyes. Look at that man's conduct. Was his fear rational? No, it was found not to be rational. Meaning that he was entitled to shoot? No. That's why he's convicted. Please, let's understand. Let's understand when you combine these factors, you can't look at each one in isolation. Put them in one box and see who's this man that you must sentence.
The end of the trial, the relationship between Oscar and Reva had been dragged out before the public. The mental state of Oscar had been questioned and evaluated. The horrendous fate that befell Reva had been relived by her friends and family, and the case would fall to Judge Masipa to decide.
Mr. Pistorius, please stand up. Having regard to the totality of this evidence, in this matter, the unanimous decision of this court is the following. On count 1, murder read with section 51(1) of the Criminal Law Amendment Act The accused is found not guilty and is discharged. Instead, he is found guilty of culpable homicide. On count 2, contravention of Section 120, subsection 7 of the Firearms Control Act, number 60 of 2000, the accused is found guilty.
Oscar Pistorius would be found guilty of culpable homicide, a crime similar to that of manslaughter in the U.S. He would be found guilty of reckless endangerment for the prior discharge of a friend's firearm at a restaurant in an unrelated incident. The ruling would mean that he was not guilty of murder in the death of Riva Steenkamp. Sentencing would happen on October 21, 2014. He was sentenced to the maximum of 5 years for the culpable homicide and a term of 3 years concurrent for the endangerment charge. He would be eligible for supervised correctional release after only 10 months. Feeling that the case had not been decided correctly, the prosecution took the case to the nation's appeals court, arguing that even if there had been no initial plan to kill Riva, the very fact that Oscar knew how deadly the shots would be and that he knew there would be no chance of anyone surviving in the tiny toilet room, he was guilty of murder. The appeals court would eventually find in favor of the prosecution. Oscar's sentence would now be one for murder. The family had declined to address the court in the original sentencing, but the pain they had suffered throughout the ordeal became too much for them to remain silent.
I don't wish that on any human being. Finding out what happened, it devastated us at times. I thought with the pain that Riva went through, I used to I don't know whether I was going mental or whatever, but I used to take my fist and hit it up there against the walls with my knuckles. My injection from my diabetes, I used to take the needle and shove it and turn it into my stomach and my arms to see if I could feel the same type of pain.
Oscar would receive a new sentence of 15 years, modified for the time he had already served. He will be eligible for parole in 2024. Even those years spent feel like they will do nothing to ease the pain felt by any of those involved. Whether the vile murder or a tragic accident, the survivors are left to carry on as best they can. If you found this case compelling, don't forget to like the video, comment down below your take on it, and please subscribe to the channel. Also, hit the notification bell in order to stay up to date each time we reveal a new shocking case. Until next time, stay safe and keep your eyes peeled. You never know what's lurking in the shadows.